Cyber Shadow is the latest in modern retro-style games. This one taking a page from Ninja Gaiden, and I was lucky enough to get a press key to check this one out. And what we have here is a very much a focus on the brutal challenge of Ninja Gaiden that may or may not work for everybody. So our main gameplay loop is going to be 2D action. You're going to be running, jumping, slashing your sword, and throwing miscellaneous projectiles at all manner of robots, mutants, and more. As the game goes on, you will unlock additional abilities, including the power to parry shots as you saw right there, a very important master dash, charge, and of course, it wouldn't be a platformer without having a double jump. Now, the basic structure of this game should be familiar to anyone who's played Shovel Knight, Ninja Gaiden, or any kind of classic action game. You're going to move from level to level, fighting your way through these enemies, hopefully making it to some of the few or scant checkpoints that can be around, and fighting some crazy boss, who can probably take a huge chunk of your health with a single hit. Now, the boss design itself is all built on fixed pattern fighting. So they're going to perform the same attacks just about like clockwork. And Cyber Shadow is definitely set up for, I think, speedrun purposes in that regard. A lot of this game is just about figuring out the magic cycle that you need to get through the myriad of obstacles and enemies coming at you. And for the first half of this game, it does feel very much like a refined take on the Ninja Gaiden formula, especially avoiding some of the more nastier things that we saw in Ninja Gaiden 1 through 3 on the NES. And one of the nice things is that there are no live systems in this game. As long as you make it to a checkpoint, the game will preserve your progress, and you can spend the kind of in-game currency, that is the crystals that you see underneath my SP bar, to unlock additional functionality at the checkpoints, such as getting a free power-up, or being able to get full HP and SP refill at them. And of course the cost will go up and you'll have to prioritize which checkpoints you want to use. Now, with that said, from a movement tech perspective, Cyber Shadow I think largely works. The dash and the parry felt a little janky to me. For the dash, it's set up so that you double tap in a direction to run. I found it far safer and more consistent to set it to a button press, and you can do that from the main menu. With a parry, it only works if you're pressing forward. Even if you're in the air or on the ground, it doesn't matter. And if you're using a D-pad or analog stick that has any kind of like dead zone issues, you can run into that situation where you're pressing left or right, but it's in you're pressing maybe up left or down right, and the parry will not go off. And dashing and parrying are very big in terms of advanced tech, and really evening the odds in the back half of the game. In terms of the art itself, I think the game looks alright, but it didn't, I think, look as, like high pixel quality as some of the stuff I saw in the end years of the NES itself. And for anyone who does like pixel art and such, I'm curious what your thoughts are on the overall art of Cyber Shadow. Now, with that said, the game for like the first half is a very solid entry in this modern retro design. But unfortunately, things began to go pear-shaped in the back half. And we're going to talk about that next, but first, a quick break. And now for a quick thank you to our current Patreon supporters. And if you're interested in my books on design, they are available at most major retailers. 20 Essential Games to Study is for first-time developers looking to be inspired, and the Game Design Deep Dive series covers the history and philosophy of major genres, with horror coming later in 2021. With Cyber Shadow, a lot of the difficulty and frustration of this game really doesn't rear its head until you're about 75% done it. And this is when the game really bares its teeth at you. You're going to start with a lot longer sections before any kind of checkpoints, and enemies begin to do more and more damage. This really falls in line with Ninja Gaiden, where in the back half final quarter, enemies who used to do like 1 to 2 bars of damage may do 3, 4, or even 5 damage. And this becomes, I think, very annoying in terms of this kind of gameplay, as you have very limited iframes, and it's very easy for one hit to turn into 3 or 4 hits. And when you die, of course, whether because of running out of health or hitting one of the many death spikes, you are going to have to restart back at the previous checkpoint. And what I found very strange was there was cases where I would go like 5-6 minutes at a single checkpoint, and then I would clear it in like 1 or 2, or in 1 or 2 little areas. So it didn't really feel consistent to me. And the footage that you're seeing right here is from one of the longer and more annoying sections near the end of the game. Bosses become a little bit more frustrating in terms of their pattern, and I guess as a brief spoiler alert, expect to fight a multi-phase boss for the end of this game. And of course, death will take you all the way back to the beginning. So with all that said, my problem with Cyber Shadow is that I think there are far better and more iterative takes on kind of modern retro platforming that we've seen over the last few years. Stuff like Alwa's Legacy, Shovel Knight, The Messenger being a really solid example, and of course games like Odalis, Curse Castilla, and so on. And I feel with this game, it is just leaning so far into the kind of brutal difficulty of Ninja Gaiden that it doesn't really do, I think, anything else to the formula. So ultimately, I think your opinion or your preference for this game is going to depend on what you thought of those titles. If you found a game like Shovel Knight or, again, The Messenger being too difficult or frustrating for you, then keep far, far away from Cyber Shadow, because it will just be too much for you. Now, if you do like a challenge and don't mind that old school frustration, then I think this game will work a lot better for you because of that. But unfortunately, I don't think there's going to be as big of a market for it compared to something like Shovel Knight. So with that said, we're going to wrap things up here. I would once again like to thank the developers for giving me a press key to check this one out. If you'd like me to take a look at your game in the future, please get in touch and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Until next time, this has been Cyber Shadow.